Am I the a-hole for letting our son use his untouched college fund as a down payment on a house and not using it to pay off our daughter's student loans? Our son just graduated college. He was extremely studious in high school and was able to get a full scholarship to the school of his choice. The college fund we saved for him therefore went untouched. Our daughter is a couple years older than our son. Despite our best efforts, she was never the greatest student. So while she was able to go to college, she received no scholarship money. The college fund we saved for her, which actually amounted to a little more than what we saved for our son, covered about half her tuition, with loans making up the rest. Our son did extremely well in college and graduated with a great job. We therefore decided to gift him his college fund to use as a down payment on a house. And with the stock market's gains over the last 4 years, it's grown quite a bit since he went off to school. Our daughter was furious when she found out that our son's college fund went towards him buying a house. She said that he's already way ahead of her in life, since he graduated debt-free with a much better paying job than our daughter's, and it's not fair to put him even further ahead. She maintains the fair thing to have done is to have put our son's fund towards paying off her loans. Both my husband, our son, and I think our daughter is being entitled, but she told some of our extended family how unfair we're being and they're taking her side. Are we somehow the unfair ones here? Now for the top comments. I'm inclined to say not Dayhall. This is a classic fair versus equal issue. Fair would say that both kids graduate debt-free, so long as you have the money to do so. That is, everyone gets what they need regardless of who needs more. While equal would say that each kid gets the same amount regardless of need. Neither is wrong, and given your kids aren't owed a college fund, you're already being very generous. It's really up to you whether you choose to be fair or to be equal. You choose equal. Each kid gets their own fund, and that's completely valid. Most wills choose equal too, giving each child the same amount regardless of who needs it more. My friend's parents chose fairness, leaving their money to their social worker son rather than their daughter married to a well-paid executive. But needs changed and they left her, cleaning out their accounts. He did have to share assets eventually, but she did not get alimony, have to be married 20 years in my state, and her standard of living is now lower than her brother's. That is super crappy. I would hope the son would realize this and give half his inheritance to his sister, which would be unlikely. I would have given a disproportionate amount to my child in greater need, but not 100% versus none. I'm sure her parents would be sad/ashamed at how it worked out. Not Dayhole. You had the same amount of money earmarked for each kid. Your daughter isn't entitled to more because she struggled more. You were perfectly fair giving them the same amount, and they used it the way each of them needed to. Actually, they said they saved up more money in the daughter's fund. Not Dayhole. The goal of college funds isn't to have complete equity of outcomes. It's to provide the same resources to each child. Kids will have different scholarships or differently priced schools, and that will impact how far their funds go. Presumably, you do the same for your daughter if the situation was flipped. Now, for the next story. Am I the a-hole for rejecting my stepkid's younger siblings from my daycare? I married my husband 10 years ago. My stepkids were 4 and 5 at the time, now 14 and just turned 16. My husband's ex has despised the fact my husband and I married before her and her husband. And she has made her hatred of me/us known to my stepkids, and in turn, my stepkids have closed themselves off from me and rejected my attempts to get close to them. We've been to court, we have presented proof to the judge, taken them to therapy, but mom's hold over them is strong, and her words are taken more seriously than my husband's with the kids. I tried to be a loving, caring stepmother who didn't overstep, but my stepkids have been perfectly clear. I am nothing to them and will always be nothing to them. So I am less hyper-focused in what they think of me. For years, it kept me awake at night with worry and sadness. Now, I'm sad. Breaks my freaking heart that I love them and they don't reciprocate because of some dumb issue their mom had with me that turned to hate. But it's the cards we have been dealt with. I run a daycare. It's the cheapest daycare around because I always dreamed of giving back in some way to working families. And so I was able to make it work. It is popular, but we always do our best to take kids when needed. My husband's ex and her husband have kids together. Their youngest two are not in school, and their household was hit hard by COVID, so they tried to register their kids in my daycare. I rejected them. I did so because I did not feel like it would be healthy to have that extra layer of dealing with each other. The woman already hates me, has told me not to touch her kids. And while I run the place, I also work there. With the kids. So never interacting with her kids will not be a thing that can happen. And I am afraid she would go out of her way to try and get me shut down as some petty revenge thing. The issue is, she was pissed about the rejection and told my stepkids, and they told my husband's family, who now think I'm the a-hole, as well as the ex and my stepkids, because this could have been me showing my stepkids that I'm willing to go out of my way for their other family. And that is fine. Except I have always done my best to be kind, to be friendly, to not fight, and it wasn't enough. I don't see this one thing tipping the scale after a decade. But I want to know if I'm the a-hole for rejecting the kids from my daycare? Not the a-hole. She asked you not to touch her kids. How can you do that if they're at your daycare? OP is being smart and protecting herself, her employees, and her business. All it takes is one allegation, and she could lose everything. Suppose on if the kiddos has an accident. What's to stop the mother from alleging abuse? Part of me thinks that's the mother's end goal anyway. She cannot stand OP. So why out of every other childcare situation known to humanity would she want her kids to be cared for by OP? Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Your decision seems well thought out, and you have the right to do what's best to protect your own family and business. I can't even comprehend after everything she has done to you that she would even think this was okay to try to enroll her kids with you. Though it may very well have been another ploy to make you look bad. As in, she knew you'd say no. She knew it would cause more friction, and it was just another way to make you look bad to your stepkids. I'm sorry you have to experience all of this from your husband's ex, but your continued ability rising above the situation is a testimony to her character, and, well, her behavior is a testament to her own. Good luck. Not the a-hole. It sounds like you have a damn good reason not to be anywhere near her kids. If she's already told you not to touch her kids, then tries to enroll said kids at your daycare, yeah, I'd be worried too that she's trying to pull something. Not the a-hole. This would be a crap show waiting to happen if you allowed those kids in. Imagine they have a serious accident at daycare, or even not so overly serious but get a bruised knee, etc. Who do you think is getting the blame regardless of the circumstances? I'm about to sound like an a-hole, but the ex could be picturing a huge insurance payout if something were to happen. 100% you did the right thing rejecting them. This has been my fear too. Like maybe even a small paper cut, I could see sending her over the edge. Next story. Am I the a-hole for manipulating my daughter's marriage? From the title, I'm sure I, 49 male, do sound like one. My eldest daughter seems to believe I am, so wanted to know if she's right. A couple years ago, my daughter Nat, who was 21 at the time, introduced us to her fiancé, a 46-year-old man, literally 1 year younger than me. Everyone in the family was livid. My ex-wife, and so was I, honestly. It took a lot of restraint not to lose control the first time I met him. Nat said they met at work. He wasn't her direct supervisor due to them working different departments, but that still didn't sit right with me. She swore up and down they're in love and they were gonna make it work. Nat is a sweet girl, very smart and mature, but the first time I met him, I saw right through him. Actually got some pretty good advice from a close friend of mine. He encouraged me to befriend the guy, support my daughter even if I don't support it. But be his friend in a way that makes my daughter see his real age and show how completely different they really are. I wasn't over the top with it, but I did attempt to become close with him, not that I enjoyed any second of it. When they'd come over for a visit, we spent hours talking about politics, work, what our plans were once we finally hit retirement, shared stories from childhood. Sometimes I could tell the conversations would bore my daughter, even when we'd include her in them. It's been over a year since they got married, and Nat decided to leave him a few weeks ago. She asked me for help finding an attorney, so me and her mom have been helping out with that. She left other place, so at the moment she's staying with me. As I suspected, she realized they were not compatible at all, and it just felt weird according to her how similar me and him are. I'll be honest, I'm relieved I won't have to be his friend anymore. Everyone came over for Father's Day. Nat went with her brother to buy more chips and sodas, so it was only me and eldest daughter. My eldest daughter asked if I'd be able to cope with not having my buddy anymore, and I said of course. It's not like I enjoy being around the guy. She asked what I meant, and I explained I only became friendly with him so that Nat could see more of his actual age, how different they actually are, and so that she wouldn't shut me out of her life. My daughter is taking it like I intentionally manipulated the man in order to end his marriage. She thinks now that I'm an a-hole for befriending him under false pretenses, just to get Nat to leave him, and it's basically my fault they're divorcing. I'm not sure how it would be my fault. Nat said herself she saw how completely incompatible they were. But she does seem to think I was one for being part of why she left him. Honestly, I'm lost here. Am I the a-hole? Added to clarify, this conversation was with my other daughter, not with Nat. Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. You did good. Clearly, you were right about him. If you didn't expedite the process, she would have only realized it 3 to 5 years from now. She's upset because you were right and she was wrong. Sadly, this is the correct answer, only because it sucks she got taken advantage of to begin with. Not the a-hole. You were being polite and cordial, even if you meant to kill him with kindness and expose him, because that's just who he is. A 46-year-old man. Her father's peer, not her own. There was no deceit or malice in your actions, only concern and support for your daughter and her husband, even if you didn't approve. I hope she can recover and be well from the divorce, and ends up happy as both an individual person and in any future relationships. If the fiancé had been a rage but unlikable for some reason, the same approach would have been a good one as well. 21 is still young enough to be in rebel mode. Not giving the daughter something to rebel against and not making staying with him feel necessary to save face was a good decision. Not the a-hole. Your only mistake was not taking this little bit of showmanship to the grave. Her marriage didn't end because of you. It ended because she realized, with a bit of indirect help, that this relationship was not what she wanted. For real, why did he have to tell his daughter about that? What was Opie thinking? It's not something you brag about. After all, the marriage ended already. You're the a-hole for giving the plot away. My eldest daughter asked if I'd be able to cope with not having my buddy anymore. No, it made my daughter unhappy. There was no reason to monologue like a Bond villain. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for making my husband fish out our son's dirty diaper from the water? Hello. Me, female 29, and my husband, male 33, haven't gone out in a while, about 4 months. And the reason for that is he lost his best friend. They were like brothers, and this loss was very devastating for my husband. As a result, he's become less active and less interested in doing things. I wanted to cheer him up and get some family time together, and since weather is hot, I wanted us to go have fun at the beach. We had a tent at the beach and brought our own food and stuff we needed to spend the day. My husband wanted to change our son's diaper, so I let him handle it while I prepared a meal. When finished, I asked him to wrap the dirty diaper and put it in the trash bin outside. He went outside for a minute, then came back. I then went outside the tent and saw a teenager telling me my husband just tossed our son's dirty diaper in the water. I was shocked. I confronted him and asked why he didn't dispose the diaper in the trash bin. He said he couldn't find it after looking. I decided to toss the diaper into the water because he was too tired to walk further. I said it was unhygienic and disgusting to throw it into the water where people are swimming. His defense was that the waves were going to carry it away. I got so mad at him and told him to quickly fish it out the water because this was disgusting and disrespectful to nature and the people on the beach. He said he could barely see it, so no one would notice. I said someone could have got this on video and posted it, making us look horrible. I pressured him to go after he wanted me to go. He went and was able to get it out, then threw a fit saying I made him go into the water knowing he wasn't prepared, and that it wasn't an emergency, it was just a diaper and people pee in the sea, so what is the difference? He said I knew how much he's been struggling in the past months, and wanted to enjoy a day out on the beach, but I treated him like a child and forced him to make a huge amount of effort to get the diaper out. He remained upset the rest of the day, claiming I exaggerated with how pushy I was. So did I really ruin the day out for him by making him do that? Not the a-hole. That was lazy and disgusting of him, and he acted like a toddler. If he can't be asked to be an adult, he doesn't need to go on vacations. I understand his feeling down, but that's not an excuse. Also, the husband was confused why he can't throw pee into water. Almost all single-use diapers are not biodegradable and include a variety of plastic-based ingredients. But I treated him like a child and forced him to make a huge amount of effort to get the diaper out. You treated him like a child because he behaved like a child. The huge amount of effort, lol, was a consequence of his own actions. Piggybacking because I think you summed it up nicely. Husband acted like a child, belittling a used diaper into the water out of sheer laziness. Hope he's not the a-hole. Anyone who chooses to litter is the a-hole. Especially when that litter contains human waste. Especially when that litter is a diaper, which are known for being particularly damaging to the environment as they do not break down quickly or easily. A disposable diaper can take 500 years to break down. People pee in the sea, so what is the difference? Urine dissipates very quickly in seawater and is mostly made up of water. People can still step in a pile of baby poop, and a disposable diaper is made out of materials that take years to break down. And the earth is not a trash can. Not the a-hole. Grieving is no excuse to not use a trash can. Am I the a-hole for spending my daughter's wedding fund on a car and a trip after she got eloped? My only child, Diana, and her now husband started dating in college and had been engaged just before the pandemic hit. After not being able to really plan for over a year due to everything, they decided a couple weeks ago to just take a trip, just the two of them, and elope. I'm very happy for them, and honestly, I'm glad to not have to deal with the stress of wedding planning. I had about $35,000 set aside for her wedding in an account I've had for a long time. After she told me the news, I was thrilled to be able to put it to other use. My car has been having some trouble lately, so I decided to just treat myself and get a new car in cash with the wedding fund. I paid about $30,000, and with the rest of the money, my wife and I decided we would take our little getaway. I didn't think this was controversial. Then, this past weekend, Diana was over and asked that since I didn't have to pay for a big wedding, if they could get the money to use towards a down payment. I told her sorry, but that's how I paid for my new car and will be paying for my upcoming trip. To say she was upset is an understatement. I figured I'd just let her cool off. But then last night, my ex, her mom, called me to telling me I made a selfish move and said some more things I won't repeat. I never told her it was a wedding or whatever she wanted fund, so I didn't think I did anything wrong. Would really appreciate some non-biased perspectives. Edit. Sorry if I worded this poorly, I'm not the best writer. I'm a blue-collar guy. She knew that I had money put aside for her wedding. It was something we talked about when she first got engaged over a year ago, but it's come up at times before that too. Just something I planned for due to having a daughter. I never told her it was a fund for her to use on whatever. I paid for her college and planned on paying for her wedding. But beyond that, didn't plan on paying her way through life. My parents couldn't help me out financially in life, so my goal was to pay for her schooling and wedding so she could start adulthood on the right foot. I felt like I accomplished that. We are far from wealthy. I did not go to college, but I always did my best to save and be responsible with money so I could help her start off the right way. I never expected to be paying her way through life. Maybe it's a dated traditional mindset, but I always believed after your kids officially start their own family, your job as a provider has been accomplished, and it is their turn to provide for themselves. Now it's my time to put myself and own finances as #1 priority. I had her very young, 19, and still have a lot of working years left until retirement, hence the need for a reliable car. Now for the top comments. Note: OP paid for his daughter's entire college tuition and living expenses, so she's starting out in life with zero college debt. Isn't that gift enough? Not a-hole. I can hear where the daughter is coming from. She feels that the money was supposed to be used for her, and since her big wedding didn't happen, she should be able to use it for another purpose. That said, she's being entitled here. If she discussed this situation with her dad beforehand, we decided to elope. Would you be open to giving us the wedding money to spend on a house, etc.? Then they might have worked something out. Our dad could have said no. The issue is that she assumed it was still hers and is now disappointed that they can't buy a house right away and is behaving childishly. OP, you are not an a-hole. Daughter is allowed to be disappointed, but not an ungrateful entitled brat. Especially since you paid for all her schooling. Not a hole. Parents paying for or contributing to a wedding is always a bonus. Whether you had it in a separate account or you would have paid out of your normal accounts, still your money. If she truly felt she was entitled to this money, then she should have explicitly had a discussion with you prior to eloping. Like, I think we're going to skip the big wedding and just elope. How would you feel about using that money to help us toward a house? That's exactly what she should have done. Ask. It doesn't sound like Opie would have given it to her, but who knows? It was a bold assumption of hers to think that money was sitting there for her to do whatever she wanted to with it. A wedding is for the whole family, not just the bride and groom. I'm going to give a tentative not a-hole. But realistically, this largely comes down to how the fund was discussed and handled between you and your daughter, and you're not very clear about that in the original post. A friend's parents had a wedding fund for her, and while not super clear about how it was discussed privately, she was able to use what she didn't spend on the wedding toward her honeymoon and house. I wouldn't go so far as to say that would be assumed, but again, it would come down to the understanding between you and your daughter, and we don't really know what that was like. Agreed. I can definitely see conversations about your wedding fund leading her to believe it was her fund. If Opie never said exclusively a wedding fund, I absolutely can see why she would think that. And it's not an unreasonable request to put your wedding fund toward down payment. I know someone who asked her parents if she could put most of her wedding fund toward a down payment and have a smaller wedding, and they enthusiastically said yes, because the understanding that it was her fund to use towards something big that was probably going to be a wedding, because that's usually the biggest expense. Low-key, you're the a-hole for not discussing something you've been referring to as hers before you spent it, so she knew that she wasn't going to see any of that money for even a honeymoon or anything. Final response. This blew up way more than expected overnight. A lot of people have inserted their own assumptions out of nowhere. Promises that never happened, tension between stepmother, riches I don't have, an obsession with her getting married even though I said I was relieved she eloped, etc. Which is odd. Basically, what I've gathered from the vast majority is that I didn't do anything wrong, but I should have communicated more clearly. I thought that I was crystal clear, but I see now that I could have been even more clear. Thank you everyone for your time. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for kicking my son out and threatening to take his tuition money after he trashed my house and crashed my car? My son turned 18 a month ago, and when he did, he asked if he could drive my car. Brand new RR. I of course said no. Last week, March 23, me and my wife had to go on a business trip and wouldn't be back until April 3. So we decided to send our 4 younger kids to my parents, but our oldest didn't want to go, so let him stay home. And the past has always proven to be responsible. Well, another son, 12, decided it was a good idea to eat 6 raw eggs, because apparently he thought it would make him stronger. Surprise, it didn't. He got sick and had to be taken to the hospital. We decided that one of us should head back to check on him, so I came back, March 26. When I got back, I got an Uber to the hospital to check on him, then I went to my parents and check on my other kids, and finally I went home to check on my oldest. When I got there, my garage was open and my RR was gone. My front door was open as well, so I thought we were robbed or something. And when I saw the inside of my house, I thought that it confirmed that. It looked like it was ransacked, except nothing was gone, just broken and out of place. I was terrified that my son was kidnapped because he was gone and he wasn't picking up his phone. Well, my car was gone, my house was destroyed, and my kid was missing. So, of course, I called the cops. Well, hours later, while police were investigating my house and looking for my son, and I was on the phone with my frantic wife, he pulled up in my driveway with my wrecked car and his friend in the front seat. Apparently, he threw a party, and when it was over, he decided to go for a joyride crashing my car. Of course I was pissed, so I kicked him out and told him not to come back. When my wife got home, I told her the situation and she said that I was overreacting and I should be happy that he was safe. She invited him over and said that I should apologize. And this boy had the damn nerve to say to me, "Well, next time just let me drive the car." And I tell you, I've never been so pissed at someone so much in my life. I went off and told him that he had 3 months to find a way to pay to get my car and house fixed, and if he didn't, then he's going to have to find a new way to pay for college next fall, implying that I was going to take the money meant for his tuition. And told him not to call me or return to my house if it had nothing to do with the damages, and kicked him out again. My wife called me a selfish a-hole, and perhaps she's right, but I'm still pissed while writing this. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole, but your kids sound like afterthoughts, and your oldest is probably resentful. Not today, Hall, and you need to have a talk with your wife about how this behavior is unacceptable. She seems to be fine with it, and that is especially troubling because it means you won't be able to correct it with one parent undermining you. Everyone sucks here. Kid, obviously. You for not aligning with your wife before doling out consequences. Wife, because she should be pretty hacked too, and I'm guessing she's let him have his way too often. Regarding the consequences themselves, honestly, I think they're reasonably proportionate to your kid's A-hat attitude. Appalling lack of respect and horrible behavior. He needs a serious wake-up call. Not today, Hall. Yes, it should have crossed your mind to ask if he was okay, but your wife needs to get up to speed. Your adult son, because that's what he is now as he is 18, threw a freaking party trashing your house. Your home. The literal biggest investment you'll ever make aside from life insurance or a child. He then followed this up by wrecking a car with a friend who could have died due to your spoiled son's negligence. All because Daddy told me I can drive this car. And instead of being remotely remorseful, he comes back and basically tells you both, to your face, well, it's your fault because you told me no. Son or not, I would be pressing charges against him. It's not cool at all that your wife is trying to be mad at you and holds no anger at him. How's that happening? My mom would be the first to pop off. The next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for not immediately rushing to my partner's daughter after she was hit by a car? I, female 34, have been with my partner, Jeff, male 36, for around 6 years. I have 2 daughters, Meg 10, Charlie 8, and Jeff also has 2 daughters, Alice 12, Sarah 9. We have 2 sons together, Jack 4, Lucas 2. About 6 months ago, Alice was hit by a car and badly injured. Jeff was at work, and my sister had dropped her 5-year-old and 3-year-olds off with me to play with my boys. Alice and Meg had taken their scooters to the local shop to buy some sweets. We live in a pretty safe town, and I'm happy to let the girls go to the shops and ride their scooters or bikes around, as long as one of the older girls is with them. Meg came dashing home crying that Alice had been hit by a car and was badly hurt. Meg was hysterical, and it was really hard to get any clear information from her. But she was able to tell me eventually that it was about a 10-minute scooter ride away, and that a lady was with Alice and had called an ambulance. I tried to run to my neighbor to see if she could look after the younger kids while I went back out with Meg, but she wasn't home. My car doesn't have space for all of the kids, or enough car seats for my nephews as well as my sons. I rang Jeff and his brother who lives local a few times, as well as Alice's mom and my sister, and couldn't get through anyone. I didn't want to take all of the kids with me by foot as it would take too long to get them there, and I also didn't want them to see Alice hurt, but I couldn't leave them home alone. Eventually, I got hold of a friend who promised to be there in 5 minutes to mind the kids. By the time I got to the accident site, the ambulance had already taken Alice away. She broke her leg badly and had a concussion, but is otherwise on the mend. She was really upset to be left with a stranger at the accident site and has had nightmares about it. Jeff was also really upset, but understood that I couldn't get there. However, few of Alice's mom's family have been angry at me, saying that I would have gotten there faster if it was Meg. I can't deny that I probably would have been a lot more upset and panicked if it was Meg. But equally, I tried everything I could think of to get there but not leave the other kids in danger. Am I the a-hole? Should I have left the kids in the house with Meg or found some way to get all down to the accident site with me? Now for the top comments. You're the a-hole for some all-around parenting issues that culminated in this situation. Neither the 12 or 10-year-old have a phone, but you were letting them go around town? You think one of the older girls is okay to be in charge for that, but not to watch the 4 toddlers at home? Or she could watch 2 toddlers and you take the other 2 with you. You're babysitting extra kids without the ability to drive them anywhere in an emergency? You reached out to 4 different people and none of them even answered a text or call. Not even the mom whose kids you were babysitting? Why didn't your daughter or the woman who called 911 also call you, instead of having the kids scooter 10 minutes home to you? How throwback are all of you when it comes to phones? And you admit you would have handled this differently if it were your biological child. For someone with this many kids, and extras you apparently babysit, you seem woefully unprepared physically and emotionally for the type of emergencies that could rise. The oldest, 12, one would have been an okay age to look after the toddlers, or at least half of them, had she not been the one hit by the car. 10 years old, the one who came home, is not an age to leave at home looking after toddlers by themselves. Right? I think people are forgetting that there was a 2, 3, 4, and 5-year-old there. No 10-year-old would be able to manage that by themselves. As a father of step and biological children, seeing you admit elsewhere in the comments that you love your other kids more and you would have found a solution for your bio kid really upsets me. Offhand solution: the 8/9-year-olds can sit with the toddlers latched in a playpen while you freaking sprint to the child hit by a car. Children have no sense of time or distance. That 5 minutes was probably more like 2 minutes. She could have died with only a stranger to comfort her. Her sister came as fast as she could to get help and watched you do nothing. You're the a-hole. Edit. Lots of folks saying the older kids couldn't possibly handle the younger. I disagree fully, especially in emergencies. But everyone, including me, seems to be forgetting a key point. She had a car. She simply couldn't fit 5 kids in it to get to the 6th. Putting aside the fact that why do you only have a vehicle that you can't fit a family in, as there may be financial reasons. Why the hell not put the youngest kids in the car and leave the eldest home? The point is, there were multiple ways to solve this problem and OP pursued none of them. While clearly admitting she would have done so for her real kids because she loves them more. Honestly. Edit. Thank you for your honest judgment. A lot of you are saying what I feel. I honestly don't know what I would have done if it had been Meg that was hurt. The guilt is eating me up inside that I would have somehow found a solution for her, but I just can't think of what that solution would have been. The thought that I would have somehow found one if it had been Meg is hard to live with. I'm going to speak with Jeff tonight and show him this post. I do love Alice and Sarah, but I just can't help that I love my biological kids more. I don't know what's wrong with me. We only have the girls 1 weekend a month and in the holidays, but that isn't an excuse. I do love them, but you are all right. They deserve more. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for only punishing my stepson and not my son, even though they both broke each other's laptops? I'm, female, a mom of 2. Chris, 16 bio, and Sammy, 13 stepson. I've been married to Sammy's father for over 4 years. The boys argue sometimes, but nothing huge, just minor everyday issues. And since my husband is busy all the time, he's a nurse, I handle the boys' issues. Last week, Chris was bringing Sammy's laptop from his rooms and Sammy asked. Chris unfortunately fell off the stairs, injured his knee, and Sammy's laptop broke. Sammy was mad, although it was an accident. I told him I'd get it fixed quickly. However, he kept bringing it up and arguing with Chris about it even after Chris apologized. The next day, Chris showed me his laptop and was crying, saying Sammy did it to get even. That was unacceptable behavior. Sammy didn't deny it. In fact, brag about it and said Chris will learn not to mess with his stuff. I was so mad at him, I told him he made a mistake and told him he was grounded. My husband told me to hang on a second and ask why I only punished Sammy, although Chris broke his laptop. I said it's different. Chris didn't mean it. It was an accident. But Sammy planned to and damaged Chris's laptop. My husband called me ridiculous since it's the same outcome. Said it's fair to ground Chris too, but I refused. We started arguing, and my husband told me what I'm doing doesn't look good because I'm showing favoritism and it'll ruin the kids' relationship. I insisted it was unfair to ground both kids, and he insisted I was playing favorites. Sammy's upset already. I took both laptops to the store to get them fixed, and my husband sent me a text with the word favoritism typed like this, saying he handled the entire thing the wrong way. Intent matters here. Chris broke Sammy's laptop accidentally. Sammy broke Chris's laptop on purpose. While it's true that both laptops are broken, only one was broken out of malice. Your assessment of the situation and who got punished is absolutely correct and not favoritism. Not an a-hole. The purpose of grounding is to learn. Does Chris learn not to fall? Probably not. But Sammy should learn not to break his stepbrother's stuff. Definitely not an a-hole. Not an a-hole. One was an accident. One was deliberate and cruel sabotage. It's absurd that your husband doesn't see that. Also kind of absurd that you seem to be fully responsible for caring both kids because your husband has a job? That text sounds like it came from a teenage boy. Yes, they aren't the same actions at all. Basing it on results is stupid. Not an a-hole. Your sons did not behave equally, so they shouldn't be punished equally. Intention matters. This is not a controversial idea. This is why manslaughter is not punished the same as premeditated murder. Your husband is the one showing favoritism, and he needs to get it through his head that one of his sons destroyed property on purpose in an act of revenge. The thing that will ruin your son's relationship with each other is if it goes without consequences. Am I the a-hole for missing most of my daughter's wedding? After she scheduled hers the day after my stepdaughter's wedding, even though I tried to be there? My daughter has always been resentful of my stepdaughter. And growing up, we've had to deal with a lot of issues related to this resentment. The unfortunate reality was that my ex and I had shared custody. So naturally, I saw my daughter less than my stepdaughter. My stepdaughter's biological father passed away, and I've treated her like my own since she was 2. I love them both equally, and I've never shown preferential treatment towards my stepdaughter, something my daughter always accuses me of. In 2019, my stepdaughter sent out a save-the-date for her wedding for a Saturday in September. My daughter immediately called me, furious, and accusing her stepsister of deliberately planning her wedding the day before hers. My daughter sent out her own save-the-date a week later for the Sunday on that same weekend. I talked to my stepdaughter, who said it was pure coincidence, and that she doesn't even talk to my daughter after all those years of them not getting along. The issue is that my daughter's wedding was happening in another state that is 13-hour drive away, and both of them wanted me to walk them down the aisle. All of my extended family chose to attend my daughter's wedding over my stepdaughter's. I did the math, and I calculated that if I left my stepdaughter's wedding at 10 p.m. and drove through the night, I'd make it with 2 hours to freshen up and get ready. Unfortunately, I got lost along the way plus traffic, and I missed the actual wedding ceremony. My daughter's stepfather ended up walking her down the aisle by himself. I feel like I tried my best to make both my children happy, but I failed one of them completely. My stepdaughter and her husband have been attacked on Facebook by my daughter's friends who is claiming that my stepdaughter planned it on purpose. And when I tried to clear up the situation, I was completely shut down. I gave my daughter and son-in-law an additional gift of money to go to Japan, which has always been their dream. It was a lot of money, but I hoped it would be a sort of way for me to ask for forgiveness. They had to postpone their trip because of COVID, but my daughter refuses to even consider any sort of forgiveness. The few times she picks up my calls always ends with her bringing up the wedding and getting angry at me again. I was told by a few members of my family that I was the a-hole for not prioritizing my biological child's wedding and skipping my stepdaughter's wedding instead. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comment. You're the a-hole. Word of advice, Opie. The reason why she isn't satisfied is because she never wanted the money or expensive gifts. She just wanted her dad. I feel like this was a pattern for her growing up. I know it was beyond your control and you say there was no favoritism, but it probably came off that way. You're not an a-hole for trying to be there for both of them. You're the a-hole for being blind thinking you can buy her off. My first thought was to wonder why Opie didn't book a flight instead of driving 13 hours. Surely if Opie has money to splash for a holiday for his daughter, he could have booked a plane and hire a car. Opie replied in one of the comments that it'd take longer. You're the a-hole. You have 2 daughters who were engaged in planning weddings, and you were so disengaged that you didn't even know what month they were both looking at for the wedding. Were you even talking to them about it? Then, knowing that your daughter struggles with you being more present in the stepdaughter's life than hers, you prioritized the stepdaughter's reception over being sure you'd be present at your daughter's wedding. Yeah, I can see why she's upset. You can say you have good intentions, but that's not going to change the perception that she has. That you didn't care for years, and even on this day, you picked someone else. Hard to disagree. I'm wedding planning right now, and I guarantee that my parents don't know our date off the top of their heads, especially because these things change as venues and catering and such are figured out. The entire purpose of a save the date is to share your finalized date and location with your family and guests. Info. Was your first time hearing about these weddings the day you received the save the dates? Did neither of your daughters share possible dates with you beforehand? Was bio daughter invited to stepdaughter's wedding? And why didn't you leave until 10 p.m.? Everyone sucks here. Your bio daughter because she didn't help any of the drama at best, and at worst purposefully caused the drama. If we're thinking 2 hours is a good buffer after a 13-hour drive that you started at 10 p.m. after a wedding, you would have walked down that aisle looking like a zombie even after a shower. Rude to your daughter for not leaving until 10 p.m. Friend's opinion or not, you did choose your stepdaughter over your bio daughter. If you expect your bio daughter to get over her bio father who was supposed to walk her down the aisle not even being there, why wouldn't you expect your stepdaughter to understand that you had to leave her party to walk your other daughter down the aisle? The way you phrased the "unfortunately stepdaughter lived with me full time so I had more time with her," in my opinion, sounds like a justification for the same performative effort but lack of actual effort and care taken in this matter. You are at fault at least as much as her in this. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not inviting my aunt to my wedding and saying she's not invited to my bridal shower? My Aunt Diane, fake name, isn't someone who's a nice person. She, my dad, and her sister, my other aunt, do not get along. They're always feuding over politics and BS. I haven't seen her in years, and she's largely been absent from my life. This summer, both my sister and I are getting married. My sister and I are in vastly different fields. I work for a software company as a designer, and my sister's becoming a doctor. We're just very different people with different interests. But for some reason, Aunt Diane always feels the need to brag about my sister on Facebook, even though she's not a part of her life either. She'll post things about how proud of her she is, how wonderful she is, and had never once felt the need to do that about me. Normally, I would just brush it off because I really don't care what she thinks. She's just a sad woman. The background behind why I don't want her at my wedding is this. I got engaged a full year before my sister. My fiancé and I have been together almost 10 years now and have just not been in a rush to get married. I didn't think twice about not getting a congratulatory comment/post from her. But when my sister got engaged a year later, she posted multiple things on Facebook about their engagement, about her fiancé, about the ring, etc. That's when I lost it. I told my parents she was under no circumstances invited to my wedding or shower. I was the one who sent the wedding invite, so I never sent one to her. I'm pretty sure my dad, her brother, just told her she wasn't invited because she couldn't come anyway. I just went to my sister's shower the other day, and my Aunt Betty told me that Aunt Diane would absolutely be attending my shower. I told her this was news to me since she wasn't invited to my wedding. My mom looked mortified and got pissed at me. I refuse to have someone attend my wedding who's made it clear she doesn't care about me. Am I the a-hole for not inviting her? Edit. Someone mentioned this and I want to clear this up. My aunt does not have a closer relationship with my sister versus me. Neither one of us has spoken to her in 20 plus years. We just happen to all be Facebook friends. She's never reached out to either of us prior to my sister starting medical school. And my aunt and I are no longer Facebook friends. Lol. Not the a-hole. You're not under any obligation to invite anyone. It's your celebration, so you get to decide who to celebrate with. Also, under no obligation to be Facebook friends with anyone you don't want to. Not the a-hole, but it might be a good idea to communicate with Diane directly and explain that she is not invited. Maybe a record conversation. I offered to reach out to her personally about this decision, and my parents told me absolutely not. I'm an adult and feel that I'm the one who owes her this explanation. I hate being fake. As you say, you're an adult. Perhaps it's time to not let your parents control how you communicate with your aunt. Tactfully respecting her parents' wishes about how to interact with her aunt isn't the parents controlling her communication. There hasn't been any escalation here on the part of the aunt. If she starts talking trash on Facebook, then it would be worth confronting her regardless of the parents' wishes. Right now, though, OP doesn't need to ring her up and say, "I'm not inviting you because blank." That would be OP escalating the situation and inviting conflict. Exactly. I'm not letting my parents control me. I'm just respecting them and not causing a blowout fight. Not the a-hole. My wife and I work in weddings, and I'm gonna tell you the same thing we tell every one of our couples. It's your day, not theirs. And if you don't want someone at your wedding, then you don't need to have them there. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for lying to my mother about keeping contact with ex-stepfamily? Male 19. I lived alone with my mom for all my childhood, but around 11, My mom started a relationship with a dude who hated me and whom I hated. However, he had 2 daughters that came living with us, all whom I loved, brotherly sons. Since he was a prick to me, and sadly, my mom was a prick to them, it was the world against us 3. I still got out of this home around 16 years old and went living in a college town. I supply myself 100%. Food, my college, rent, car, etc. And I'm 19 now. But I kept coming back at least every 2 weeks to see my sisters and do something with them. They're 13 and 14 today, by the way. My mom and ex-stepfather broke up in January, and my mom specifically asked me to not have any contact with any of the step family. But I couldn't abandon my sisters. I still visit them every week almost because they're my chosen family, and ex-stepfather is not the best parent. I help them in homework or online school, take them for activities. I had to help the eldest buy her first tampons and get her the pill to help menstrual cramp. In short, I try to help them. My mom found out and got really mad that I still talk to her ex in order to keep contact with my sisters, even though I've always hated him. She threatened to stop all of her financial help. I got mad and told her I'd been living without any help for the last 3 years, which is true. She got even madder and threatened to not even acknowledge me until I asked for forgiveness and stopped seeing them. I haven't talked to her for the last 2 months. She won't even respond to me. I want to have a good relationship with her, but I can't let go of my sisters. I hate her for this, but feel guilty for this at the same time. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Your mom brought them into your family, then expects you to abandon them? Your mom is an a-hole. Thank you. Dude, you're a good man. Your sister needs you more than your mom does. Keep being there for them. So basically, your mom wanted you to play family for 8 years because she fell in love, and now she wants you to stop being family because she broke up? It doesn't work that way. It's amazing you have a good connection with your steps. Don't give it up. Not the a-hole. You disobeyed your mom's wishes. Check. But does she have any authority whatsoever over you? Nope. This is not about her. This is your life, and tell her to mind her own business. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Blood is really the smallest part of what makes someone family. There's no reason to feel guilty about maintaining your relationship with them. That's what I tend to think. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for comparing my mom and her husband to people my in-laws dislike as a way of making it clear where I stood? Confusing title, so I will explain. When I was 8, my dad died. I was the second of 4 kids. My older brother was 10, my sister was 6, and my younger brother 4. Mom married her husband 11 months after our dad died. He was a widower 14 months with 4 of his own kids, ages 11, 9, 7, and 5. The blending was done in the worst way. Met months after our parents died, moved in 11 weeks after meeting, and they were married with some family around 2 weeks after moving in together. It was pretty much said we were family now, not a blended family. He was dad, she was mom, and we were siblings. Me, my older brother, and his 3 older kids struggled. We hated the steps. We did not want to blend. We cried for our parents. Nobody got any therapy. Adoption was pushed, but thankfully mine and my brother's voices as well as the voices of his older 2 were listened to. But his 7-year-old was adopted by our mom because he was considered too young to decide. They ended up having 4 more kids together. It broke pretty spectacularly, and I don't speak to my mom or her husband, and I don't see or speak to his kids. The only reason I ever see them is because of my younger siblings, and the fact they consider him dad and are close with them. Anyway, my husband, son, and I were at my younger sister's housewarming thing. She invited my in-laws. In-laws were always aware I didn't come from a close or happy family. They knew when I didn't invite my mom to my wedding or introduced her to my son. But we were there, and I told them they were like the parents from the TLC show The Blended Bunch, just a little less twisted. My in-laws hate the show and hate the couple there, and for them, it was all they needed to know. Apparently, my mom's husband overheard and they made it a big deal, even telling my sister what I said. She told them it was no secret I didn't like them, and not to make it a big deal. But my cousin and aunt went and told me I was a witch, and I should let the past go, have a relationship with my parents, which makes me sick because he is not my parent. But I do wonder if the comment at the place and time was wrong, and maybe it makes me a bit of a prick. My older brother found it hilarious, but he shares the sentiment. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Your mom married another guy in less than a year. You weren't allowed proper time to mourn and lived in a literal hell. Anyone saying that you should leave the past behind should take a seat and stay quiet. Especially those who have a warm and loving home with loving parents. You didn't have that privilege, so those who do can just stay quiet. Why is it that leave the past behind folks are always the ones who mistreat you? And they never apologize. They just want you to stop being mad/hurt about their horrible actions. Then they're horrible all over again. Not the a-hole. Yes, it was the wrong place and time, but the shoe fits so well. Not the a-hole. Wow, I am so incredibly sorry you had to deal with that. I was reading this with my jaw dropped at how horribly everything was handled. Not the a-hole. This is one of the rare occasions when you're actually around your mom and her husband, and you should have been more discreet. But you didn't say it to intentionally cause conflict or drama. So for me, I think it falls in the category of honest mistake. Your cousin and aunt were out of line. They decided to create the scene, not you, and telling you to let the past go is not appropriate.
Some people just don't have the best childhood. I was lucky not to experience bullying growing up, but I hear some horror stories out there. And people like that who were victimized can only struggle to break free from that lingering mental torture, to change and be the best version of themselves. And some do succeed, like the OP in this first story. He managed to transform himself into someone he can be proud of, even got with the girl he thought great enough to marry. But then this same girl somehow managed to bring that torment back into his life, and he discovers something about his girl that would ruin the future he thought they were going to have. Let's read his story. Original post. My 26 male, fiancee Becca, 26 female, her best friend Daria, 26 female, and I all went to high school together, but I ran in a very different social circle. They played sports and were decently well known or popular. I was really into art and computers, chubby with an awkward haircut. We all went to a really large high school, so it was more that I knew of them, rather than actually knowing them. Becca and Daria have been best friends since they were really young. They both moved into the same neighborhood in preschool, and their parents are very close. In high school, there was a guy, Chris, 26 male, who would regularly bully me. There was a name that Chris and his friends called me based on a thing that happened my sophomore year. It was essentially a trap that Chris and friends had set up so that I would be embarrassed, and they could pretend I had done it to myself. I feel like I'm already doing a bad job hiding my identity, so let's just say that the name was Stinky. I hated it. They called me this all the time, and made me the butt of many of their jokes. Chris was very popular and was friends with Becca and Daria in high school. Chris was good-looking, wealthy, and he knew it. He walked around like he was untouchable. Insert all of the wealthy, athletic, good-looking stereotypes that you want here. They pretty much all rang true for him. I hated him, and hated any time that I had to be around him. I know that a lot of people face some really violent bullying, so I don't want it to make it sound like I was physically tortured, but I did feel like I was relentlessly harassed. I was very thankful and excited to get out of my hometown and away from those people when I went to college. I don't know if it was growing up and growing into myself, the ability to reset my identity, or just getting away from tormentors, but I really found myself in college. I'm still a bit nerdy and artistic, but I grew into my body. I started making friends and realized that I had something to offer the world. I rapidly became a lot more confident and comfortable socially. Becca and I ended up going to the same college a few hours away, but she didn't have a car. I offered her a ride home for Thanksgiving break, and it became a habit of riding together for breaks and chatting about life and school. We started to become friends and our friend group started to combine. In sophomore year, our talks became deeper and more personal. I realized I was into her on the way home for Christmas and asked her on a date over break. We've now been together almost 7 years, engaged for the last year. We have a strong relationship, communicate well, go on regular dates and trips, and have supported each other through numerous ups and downs. We have had our fights over the years and even did some counseling together for about a year. I was bringing my parents' passive-aggressive style of fighting into our relationship, and she was assuming I was criticizing her all the time because her mom's horrible behavior. We've found those times to be challenging, but helpful in the long run. I love this woman and I'm excited to get married and spend our lives together. Becca and Daria reconnected after college and now own a business together that plans events and helps connect people and businesses to local food, drinks, and experiences. Their business really took off in the year before COVID, and they've been slowly but steadily growing back as things have been opening up. They have started to enter into a number of exclusive contracts with event spaces and restaurants or breweries. In a market where things can turn quickly, these deals are super important to them, as they provide a lot of security for their company. Becca came home about 2 months ago, really excited about a new brewery exploring an exclusive deal. About a week later, the brewery signed and there was a dinner to celebrate. Becca asked if I want to come and meet the team from the brewery. She told me that I might have met the owner before, but I guess I didn't think to ask who it was because I didn't know who it was going into the dinner. If you're still with me, you can probably guess who the brewery owner is. I was sitting at the table with Becca waiting for the rest of the group to arrive, when Chris came through the door, walked up to the table, greeted Becca, and then turned to me and said, "Hi, Stinky." I was immediately confused and angry. She knew that I knew Chris, and she knew that he had harassed me throughout high school. She didn't mention at any point prior that he was the owner of the brewery, and that she was working closely with him. I got through dinner, but on the way home when I asked why she didn't tell me, she blew it off as though it was water under the bridge, that I had changed and that I should understand that Chris had changed too. I was still upset but tried to let bygones be bygones. Over the next couple of weeks, it was clear that Daria and Chris were becoming romantically involved with each other. Becca and I usually spend 2 to 3 nights a week with Daria, whether going out or simply watching TV at our house or hers. We often joke that we're a throuple, but to be clear, that is not the case, and what we have is strictly platonic. Over the last month or so, Chris started showing up to nights out and even came over one night to Daria's house when we were hanging out and watching TV. I've tried to be open to a new Chris, but he seems like he's the same overly macho, trying too hard to be alpha jerk he was all those years ago. I tried to bring up to Becca that the casual relationship between Daria and Chris is probably not good for their business. And while Becca agreed, she felt like she couldn't tell her friend to not date or sleep with someone. Last week, Becca invited me along to an industry event. I get there only to unfortunately find Chris is there as well. I try to be friendly and nice. We get a table for the 4 of us and have some drinks and food. At one point, the girls leave to network with a couple of potential clients. When out of nowhere, Chris starts talking about how this event might be a good place for him and Daria to find a woman to have a threesomething with. Caught completely off guard, I ask him what he's talking about, and he says that him and Daria want to have another one of those, and that I should know all about that. I was super confused and asked what he was talking about, and he proceeds to tell me that him, Daria and Becca had a couple of that activity in high school, and that he figured that I was having it with the 2 girls as well. I felt blindsided and didn't know what to say. When we got home, Becca already knew I was upset about something, and asked me what was wrong. I told her about what Chris had said, and she tried to deny it at first, but then told me that it was partially true. What Becca told me was that Daria and Chris were FWBs for a bit at the end of senior year right before college. Chris and Daria spent a few weeks talking with her about doing that with them, but she was on the fence. At a party when everyone was tipsy, it was brought up again and she went to a bedroom with them. Note for mods, they were all 18 at the time. They all stripped down and did a lot of kissing and touching, but Becca backed out of going all the way and instead just watched them. On Thanksgiving break of freshman year, the 3 talked about going all the way with it, but ended up not being able to find a free time for all of them. Daria then got a boyfriend and it was never brought up again. All of this was news to me. In addition to not really coming into myself until college, I was a late bloomer in terms of relationships, and Becca was my first everything. I knew and wasn't upset that she had experience before us, but we had never really gone into the when or who of that. Becca keeps saying that I never asked, and that she never lied about all this, but, especially with doing business with Chris, it feels like lying by omission to me. I'm struggling with all this. Chris did his best to make my life awful in high school and now is back. Almost every time I spent time with him, he seems to be belittling me, making fun of me. He even told Becca in front of me that she could do better than me and was dating down. She told me later that it was just a joke and to stop being so sensitive. It seems like this threesomething is just one more thing he can hold over me. He's a snake and always seems to say the worst stuff to me when Becca and Daria are just out of earshot. We've been arguing about this situation for about a week now. I asked Becca to cut all contact with him last night, and she told me I was being unreasonable. He's with her best friend and they all do business together. I asked if it was that Daria and her need his brewery's contract. She keeps asking me why I can't move on and just accept that Chris is a different person. Now for the top advice before reading the update. Almost every time I spent time with him, he seems to be belittling me, making fun of me. He even told Becca in front of me that she could do better than me and was dating down. She told me later that it was just a joke and stop being so sensitive. That's gonna be a no from me, doc. There's no, how can I fix this? There is a, how can she fix this? Thanks for that, babe. Hey, can I see that ring I gave you back for a bit? Just want to have the jeweler check the setting for you. If she can't see why this is a problem for you, then maybe she's just an awful person. Edit, I have reread and examined other comments. Change maybe to definitely an awful person. I have a feeling this dude is gonna sleep with OP's fiance. It's just a matter of when it happens. OP, if you have any self-respect, you will leave her, because she clearly doesn't have any for you. Last time I checked, your partner is supposed to stick up for you, not justify some giant sociopath's horse manure by claiming he was joking. Stop being so sensitive. Your fiance is a terrible person who has zero respect for you. She keeps asking me why I can't move on and accept that Chris is a different person. The thing is, you had moved on. Chris is not. Chris keeps bringing up the past. Hell, the very first time Chris saw you at the dinner where you saw him for the first time after high school, he used the nickname that was used to torment you throughout high school. It's plainly obvious who has not moved on here. It's Chris, Daria, and Becca. You have said that breakup is not an option, but it needs to be a weapon in the arsenal. Your first step should be counseling immediately, though. Becca is absolutely not seeing things from your point of view, and, until she can, there can be no moving forward. It's also obvious the attempts to talk to her one-on-one have failed to get her to see your point of view. I would also continue to sleep in the guest room. She needs to understand that this situation is deeply troubling for you. And to be honest, I'd even consider showing her this thread. Let her see how others are reacting to her actions. I'm sure she'll dispute certain details, but if the overall gist of what you wrote is truthful, it won't change our answers. She has not treated you with the respect a life partner deserves in this. And now for the update. About 3 months ago, I made a post here about my fiance doing business and hanging out with a former bully. In that post, I wrote that I wasn't looking to break up with my fiance. Rather, I was looking on how to fix things. Almost all the comments were about how I needed to break up with this girl, call her out on her manipulative BS, and so on. I was really angry with the majority of advice I got, and figured that this forum didn't know what they were talking about. I guess those would be the famous last words. In the week after I made my initial post, Becca and I seemed to have a daily fight about her and Chris. I came home from work one day after having a long fight the night before, to find Becca not in our house. This wasn't surprising in the moment since she works a really irregular schedule, but then I noticed that a bunch of her things were missing. I tried to text her making sure she was okay, and got a long text in response about how she was going to stay with her sister and how she needed some space, and for me not to contact her for a few days. I was confused, frustrated, and upset, but figured that if all she needed was some space, hopefully that would be what could get our relationship back on track. The next night, Daria texted me asking if she could come over to talk. When she got there, she told me she had been a bad friend to me. Basically, there were a number of things she felt like she should tell me, but didn't know where to draw the line between her friendship with me and her friendship with Becca. We talked for a few hours and multiple things came out. A few months before, Becca told Daria that she was doubting our relationship. Becca told her that she felt like we had gotten together so young, that she was missing out on experiences by being with me. Note, Becca never said anything about this to me. When I was thinking later about what Daria had told me this night, I remembered that months prior, Becca had this really weird week where she was really distant and kept asking me questions about what it was about her that made me want to get married. She told me later that she had just been in a weird headspace, and I kind of forgot about those conversations. When Becca and Daria first met with Chris, Becca was really flirty with him. In their industry or work connections, it's not uncommon for people to do things like be a bit flirty, a little touchy with each other, or talk about their intimate lives. This was always something I found weird or uncomfortable, but knew it to be a culture of the industry. But in this case, Daria said it went enough with Chris that she noticed it as strange. Once Daria told Becca that she had started hooking up with Chris, Becca would regularly ask for details, so much so that Daria told me she started lying to Becca, saying that their hookups were happening less frequently than they actually were, so that she wouldn't be hounded for details. A week or so before Becca and I fought about her connection with Chris, Becca was hounding Daria for details on the latest hookup and casually dropped that they should have a group activity with Chris. Daria said that she was super uncomfortable and immediately brought up Becca and my relationship. Becca said that she was just joking, but made the same joke 3 or 4 other times, until Daria said directly to her that it made her uncomfortable, and that she needed to stop. Then she got to the biggest thing. On the night that Becca left, she showed up drunk at Chris' place. He let her in, and then she tried to sleep with him. I guess Daria was in the bedroom or something, because after a bit, Daria came out to see Becca trying to grab at Chris, so they worked together to kick her out. Angry, sad, and confused, I packed my things and left our place. I didn't want to be there in case she came back, so I stayed with a friend for a bit. I didn't try to reach out to Becca and didn't hear from her either. About 2 weeks after Daria came to talk, my mom passed away. She had had a stroke years ago and had been declining for a long time. Her passing wasn't unexpected, but that didn't mean that it wasn't super hard. It was always just me and mom growing up. I was struggling a lot and felt so alone. I almost called Becca a number of times. The day of the funeral, Becca showed up. At first, I was happy to see her. She was by my side much of the day, and I was thankful she was there. Things felt normal with her there. I felt secure. It felt like we were together again, a team again. Then, when people were coming up to me after the burial, Becca said to one of my old neighbors about how sad we were, how hard it's been on us, and how we need to rely on each other. It was as though there was fog in my head that instantly lifted, and I started flipping out on her. In hindsight, I feel bad about the scene that I caused at my own mom's funeral. But I couldn't believe she was pretending that we were together, that she had been supporting me, and that she hadn't tried to be with another guy a couple of weeks before. I was really happy that my cousin stepped in and told her to leave. I blocked her on everything, and since my fiancé and mom were the only things keeping me in that area, a little over a week after the funeral, I packed up and moved to the East Coast where my cousin lives. I've been here for a little under 2 months. I wish I could say that I'm in a job making a lot more money, or that I have a hot new girlfriend, but it's been a bit of a struggle to settle in. I'm in my same job, working remote, but do need to travel to my home city every few weeks. I feel anxious there, worried that I will run into Chris or Becca. My cousin has tried to be welcoming, and I'm thankful he's given me a landing pad as I've looked for my own place here. But him and his friends are older and they mostly are focused on family life and kids, so it's been hard to make friends. I've signed up for a volleyball beer league though this fall, so hopefully there's some good people there. I want to thank this community for giving me the hard truth. I've had plenty of DMs checking in on me, which I'm mostly thankful for. This last season has been probably the hardest and darkest of my life, but I feel decently hopeful for what's ahead. Sorry to hear about all that, but at least you found out before getting married. Spend some time getting to know your new surroundings, and don't try to rush any friendships or relationships. They will happen at their own pace. Settling into a new place and making new friends is super tough as an adult. I'm so glad you joined that volleyball league. It'll be exactly what you need. Yeah, it'll take some time, but it's good OP is getting a clean break. Daria was really a good friend to you in the end. The cynic in me sees a woman who wanted her friend to stop hollering at her squeeze. Where she was trying to get revenge on Becca for trying to hook up with her boyfriend behind her back. I definitely thought of that too, but luckily her talk helped OP get free from his ex, whatever her intentions were.